female narrator. So I'll give it just a moment if you want to take any notes on this. All right, next up is the royalty split option. So this is done exclusively through ACX, and there's no out-of-pocket investment. You don't have to pay anything up front. So you could have $0 in your bank account and do this. That said, you're going to cut your royalty rates in half, and that could be a big cost over the long term. So let's say an author would have made $5,000 in royalties over X number of months or years or whatever. They would then pay $2,500 of that to the narrator, and it's automatically taken out. Right. So if that was $2,500, maybe it would have only been $1,000 or $1,500 to hire the narrator outright. Right. So it could end up costing more, especially if your book really takes off and becomes very successful. And the big thing, the big downside of this for me is that it's requires you to be locked into a contract to ACX at least 7 years. So you can't sell anywhere outside of ACX. You're going to be limited to just whichever narrator agrees to take on the deal. And big reason why I avoid this is you just don't have that control to offer it as a freebie or to sell it direct to consumer or sell it across different platforms and different places other than Amazon Audible and iTunes. So you're really restricted in what you can do with this, in addition to potentially losing more long term. So sometimes I see comments. I saw this comment in a Facebook post that I made about audiobooks, and someone was just like, royalty split. There you go, saved you money or whatever. I don't remember the thing, but it's like, that's the secret. Just use a royalty split. And I'm like, maybe in most cases I'd actually avoid it, because there are many authors who end up potentially kicking themselves because they go, well, now I'm in this contract with ACX, I can't get out. There's other things you might want to do, like maybe you want to do a discount chirp deal. Well, you can't do that if you're through ACX and locked into this. You can't control the pricing. You can't control the full distribution. And I keep bringing up this idea of selling direct to consumer. While I sell on Amazon, Audible, iTunes, the different places, it's also nice if you want to have that option, especially as you build a bigger audience, to sell direct to consumer and keep 90+% of the income for that audiobook sale. Right. So you're limited in what you can do. And even if you don't plan to do that in the next year or two, maybe 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, there's some new opportunities that open up that you want to take advantage of. Well, now you can't because you've been locked into this contract. So that's why I'd say, oh, this is really only something I consider if you just have absolutely no budget, you can't narrate it yourself, then I'd still say it's better than nothing, right? If it's either no audiobook over the next 7 years or at least this option, it's still a better than nothing sort of option. Another thing to consider, though, is something like crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is its own art and science. What you could do, though, if this is something I did, was set up a crowdfunding campaign to produce the audiobook. So the first audiobook I had produced, I did hire a narrator because I didn't know how to do it myself. It was $1,350. Before I hired the narrator, though, I set up a crowdfunding campaign. And you might think of it sort of like a pre-order campaign, where let's say you're going to sell the audiobook for $20 once it comes out. You can say, hey, if you contribute $10 to this crowdfunding campaign, you'll get the audiobook once it's ready. So it's like you get to pre-order for 50% off. And you don't have to use those numbers. You can add in other perks and bonuses and things like that. The idea, though, is there might be other people, fans, if you have a fan base, maybe even friends and family who would support the audiobook production, and they can fund maybe in part or maybe in whole the audiobook production to go with either a narrator or do it yourself. So that's something else to consider if budget is a factor. And then you also have the third option, which is to record it yourself. And here's why I choose to do this. First of all, just saving hundreds of thousands of dollars right off the bat. You have full control over the rights of the book. You can do it on your own time frame. You're not waiting around for a narrator. And the biggest reason why I choose to do this and why I became sort of obsessed with creating audiobooks myself was I want it to be in my voice. So you can create that deeper connection with your audience. Now, this is a little bit more of a nonfiction thing. Many fiction authors, though, still like doing their own audiobooks because they know how they want to tell the story. They know how they want to bring it to life. So this is the reason why the biggest reason why I personally choose to do my own audiobooks. Plus, it's easy if you know what you're doing. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be an absolute nightmare. It was for me, having to re-record an entire audiobook, make all kinds of mistakes, screw stuff up, go through trial and error. Once I figured out the process though and streamlined it, then I go, oh, this is actually really simple and easy to do. And it's something not just easy for me because I have a background in audio, but it was something that was easy enough where I was able to show now over 1,500 other authors how they could do their own audiobooks and help them get their audiobooks out there. Like Andrew, who said, yesterday I published my first audiobook. I had previously convinced myself that audiobook creation was too hard, too techy, and not for me. After studying Derek's course, I actually enjoyed the audio creation process. This is a sample of one of his books.
Did you set out in business to feel this stressed and tired?
And this is Emily. Emily's a romance author, and here's what she had to say.
After I got your course, and it turned out to be a lot easier and doable to produce your own audiobook, I was so excited. And in fact, I've even taught an assistant that I found on Fiverr who had never done any sort of audio editing. I told her to go download Audacity, and I walked her through basically what I learned from your program so that she could take over the editing for me.
The one thing you'll notice there is if you're doing your own audiobooks, you could do the recording and you could outsource the editing if you don't want to do that portion of it. Or some people I know, they will have a family member do the recording and they'll do the editing, right? So even if you invest a little bit into some of these things, you're not paying for the full editing and narration. You could kind of split the cost. So it's a way of saving some money on the production. And these are some of Emily's books here. All right, now a couple things for fiction authors. It is typical to have the protagonist and narrator be the same gender. So it's not necessarily always a requirement. You can check out your genres, hear how common that is, but that is the typical thing. And I even saw the question, well, do you need multiple narrators? Or what if you have multiple narrators? And the first thing is, in most books, you don't need multiple narrators. If you listen to the vast majority of audiobooks, it's a single narrator. It's not like if you have 12 characters, you need 12 different narrators and trying to combine them. There are some genres of romance, and it's really just romance that I can think of, where sometimes they have a male and female narrator kind of playing off two protagonists. So you can hear if that's really common in your subgenre. In most cases, though, it's going to be a single narrator. And you don't need to do voice changing software. You don't need to do, trying to do ridiculous things with their voice to do different characters. If you're not sure how this is handled, listen to some audiobooks. Listen to some audiobooks in your genre, and you'll hear that it's, typically pretty subtle shifts between different characters. And also accents. For some reason, Scotland comes up a lot with this. My book is set in Scotland, so do I need a Scottish narrator? Now, some people do like that immersive sort of experience. The thing to keep in mind is, let's say the narrator has a really strong Scottish accent, and the audience for your audiobook is primarily Americans or some nationality where maybe they're going to have a little harder time understanding it, right? So accents are fine. The thing to keep in mind, though, is they're not necessarily required, and it's really how easy is it for your audience to understand. So I'm not going to say one way or the other way whether you do accents, but I'm going to say in many cases you check out audiobooks, they don't necessarily need strong accents. Now, if you're going to record it yourself, it's going to take some time to read, record, and edit, or you can outsource the editing. It requires the right equipment, and it can take about 5 hours to produce 1 hour of finished audiobook. That's an estimation. I work faster because I have more experience. Some people are going to take more time, especially as they're going through the learning curve. This is an estimate, though. So if you had a 4-hour audiobook, once it's all said and done, we're talking about 20 hours of production time, give or take. All right, so about half a work week to get that whole audiobook produced from scratch to finished product. Now, here's one thing to consider when it comes to the time investment. You can let me know in the chat if you're doing a final proofread or one of your final proofreads. Do you ever read through your manuscript out loud? Just give a yes or no and do a quick poll here. You ever read through manuscript out loud as part of the editing process? Proofing process. Yes, very enthusiastic yeses. Yes. Okay, no, thank you for letting me know. Yes. Many of you are a yes. Okay, Robin, no. Okay, cool. A lot of yeses. Okay, tons of yeses coming in. So If the answer is yes, scale of 1 to 10, how often do you catch something reading it out loud that you didn't catch reading it in your head? 10 being you always catch something, 1 being never. 10, always. 10, yes. Often. 10, always. Yeah. Okay. So this is a side note, whether you're going to do your own audiobook or not. From a pure proofing standpoint, I highly recommend you at least do one pass where you're reading it out loud. Because as many of you have noticed, maybe I'm preaching to the choir for most of you, you're probably going to catch some things. When I was doing this with the last book I published, I caught things that early readers didn't catch, my editor didn't catch. I caught a whole duplicate section in there. And I also, some of you, you might have something play back the audio for you. I will sometimes do that as well for one version of it. The thing about reading it out loud, though, is you're going to catch certain rhythm and flow things. You're also going to catch things that might trip up a narrator, whether that narrator is someone you hire or whether it's yourself, right? So from an editing standpoint, proofing standpoint, and preparing for audiobook production, I highly recommend you read through your manuscript out loud, at least through that final pass. So I'll do multiple passes in my head. One pass might be computer reading it, and then I'll do usually a final pass reading it out loud. Well, now here's the thing. If you are not yet reading it out loud, hopefully you'll start. And if you already are reading it out loud, why not just hit the record button? Hit the record button, do your final out loud proofread, and get the audiobook narrated at the same time. Now, when I did this, all I had to do was I caught some mistakes. So I just hit pause on the recording, update the manuscript, hit the record button again, pick right back up, and keep going through it. So since if you're already reading through it out loud anyway, you can go ahead and get the audiobook narrated at the same time. And so this can save you quite a bit of time because you're just you're taking care of two things at once. Like, okay, yeah, but Derek, what if I don't like the sound of my voice? And the term I give for this, I call it being human. Meaning most people, unless you're used to it, if you do voiceover work, if you're on camera a lot where you're speaking and you're used to hearing yourself speak, I think most people don't like the sound of their own voice on recording. And the reason is it's just different than what you're used to hearing in your head when it's resonating through your skull. I can't tell you how many times though someone has said, I don't like the sound of my voice, and I listen to them and I'm like, you sound great. Right? I mean, you can ask friends and family how they feel about their, record them. How do they like it? They're like, oh, I don't like it. You might be like, you sound wonderful. You sound fine. Right? And so first thing is realizing it's a lot of times not used to it. Second thing is, and I was talking to Joanna Penn about this, and she reminded me that you can work on your voice and it develops your confidence when you're speaking that carries over to other things. So if you're doing guest podcasting, if you're recording videos, if you're doing anything where you're speaking to other people about your book, or I mean, it could be about your life or anything, right? You can develop your speaking voice and your speaking ability. And that's going to carry over to more things than just producing your audiobooks. And ultimately, though, I'm not going to say everyone has the voice to do an audiobook. Maybe I sometimes get questioned about, oh, I have a certain accent. That might be fine. Or maybe it is a really thick accent. I don't know. So what you can do is you can record a sample of you reading something, reading your book or reading something else, and you can play it for some people and ask them, hey, would you listen to this person? Would you listen to this person do an audiobook? And you don't have to tell them it's you. You can play it for strangers online. So the whole point here is don't judge yourself in your own voice. Get other people, unbiased listeners, to give you that feedback. You might also get some feedback about things that you can adjust, right? I tend to speak quickly on trainings like this because I'm like, I got so much to cover. We got to get through it. I'd also probably get the feedback, hey, you could slow down a little bit. And a nice thing about audiobooks, so people can speed up and slow down typically on their own end. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. And this is what a few other authors have said after they started doing audiobooks and narration. One author said, my voice is different than I imagined. It was odd at first, but I've gotten to know it well, and I've learned to really play with it. I write fiction, so there's a lot of room for variety. I'm enjoying the process and definitely growing in my confidence in finding what works and what doesn't. Another author said, I've been doing a lot of Facebook Lives and other videos. My voice has really changed. No nervousness, seldom a misspoken moment. Voice quality and posture when recording have gone through the roof. I'll skip to the end here. It may not be perfect, but it will be you, the author, speaking and reading. People nowadays love knowing that and are so forgiving. This is a big thing. It's not about perfection. The pratfall effect, for my fellow psychology geeks, it's the effect is basically if you're genuinely competent at something and yet you have some imperfections, you make a little mistake, you do something like that, it actually increases the bond people have with you, makes you more likable, more relatable. People don't relate to perfection, they relate to humanity, right? So it's not about being perfectly polished. It's about bringing in who you are into the narration where people get to connect. Again, that connecting on a deeper level with you and on a personal level. And another author said, took your course, created a home recording studio, recorded and published Wired My 235,000 word paranormal romance. I barely have had time to promote it, but it's earned back its investment. Bonus, I became more effective as a public speaker and get compliments for being compelling and memorable when I speak in public. So it has that transfer effect where by developing your audiobook, you're also developing your speaking abilities. So if you want to do your own audiobook, or if you want to really do anything with audio, so maybe you want to go on guest podcasts, or you want to do interviews, you want to do trainings or videos, then it's about having the right equipment. So first up, the microphone I recommend, there's a few options here. You can use a Samson Q9U, a Samson Q2U, an Audio Technica ATR 2100X, or really any dynamic microphone. These are all USB mics, so you can plug right into a USB port. And a dynamic microphone is really important because you can use what's also called a condenser microphone, and that's fine if you're in a recording studio. But typically at home, it's very sensitive. It picks up a lot of background noise. And I know I'm probably going to disappoint some people here when I reveal this, but a microphone I do not recommend for recording audiobooks. I'm holding it up right here. If you can't see it, this is the Blue Yeti. Now, it's a great mic. I have it. Obviously, I own one. The issue, though, is it's very sensitive. And it's the same thing with other condenser microphones. So it just tends to not sound as good when recording from home. And that's why I've had people who have sent me samples and I can hear it just doesn't sound that good. I find out they're using a condenser microphone. So I just recommend get a dynamic microphone. You can get them for less than $100 with something like the QTU or ATR 2100X. The Q9U is a little more than that. It's affordable and it's worth the investment. So even if you have a condenser microphone, it's worth picking up a dynamic microphone, right? And just do a quick demo of how impactful the microphone is. I'm going to go ahead and switch out the mic. Let me see if this will work here. Let's do. Okay, so I'm going to a built-in mic. Can you hear a difference now? You just say yes if you can hear a difference. Yes. Okay. How would it be if you were listening to this training with me on this microphone? Yeah, hollow and echoey. So that was going to the built-in microphone. I'm going to go back. Am I back? Can you say back in the chat? Back. Okay. Here's the thing. Some people don't like the sound of their voice because they're using the wrong microphone. Use the right microphone, you get the warmth, you get the presence, right? So the mic can make all the difference. And no amount of editing and effects and things like that are going to completely make up for just using the wrong type of microphone. Okay. Next thing, want to use a pop filter. This is a little circular disc that goes in front of the microphone. You want about half a hand's length between the pop filter and the mic. I see some pictures and people mean well. I see these articles where they're recommending the Blue Yeti and they have a pop filter and it's touching the microphone. And yeah, it might work for them. If you don't have the background in audio, they don't necessarily realize some of the issues with what they're recommending. With a pop filter, you need the distance between the pop filter and the mic for the air particles to disperse so it doesn't create that popping sound. And then a microphone stand. I use a desk stand so it's easy to kind of pull up. You can see on the camera, there's really nothing between me and the screen, or if I were reading the text on the screen or a manuscript or whatever it is, I have space in front of it. So $13-20 for a stand, 24-ish bucks. I mean, $15-25. You don't need anything fancy for some monitor headphones. That's when you're listening back to it and you want to hear if you made a mistake or need to re-record something. The music stand is optional. I used to use a music stand because I wasn't reading off my computer, so I'd print out the manuscript. But the idea here is if you are physically capable of standing up, that is ideal. So ideal posture is standing. I'm at a standing desk, so that works. If you can't stand, then it's obviously you have to sit. If you can, then you can either raise a computer monitor up on something, a laptop up on something, or you could use a music stand to hold a manuscript or an e-reader or whatever you need. So you can see less than $150 and you can create your home studio. Okay. And that's not just for one audiobook. That's multiple audiobooks, either for yourself or for other authors. Now, for the room environment, ideally you would record in a small room if possible, and not a bathroom because it can be reflective, right? So if you can put thick clothes on a clothes rack behind you or something to kind of pad the area around you in a small room, that's ideal. Walk-in closets are great. But what if you don't have a small room? What if you don't have a walk-in closet? What if you're in a situation like I was in years ago? I was in this big open loft and I don't know, 20 plus 20, 25 foot high ceilings. I don't know, like just super big. It sounds like you're in a cave. What do you do if you're in an environment like that? Okay. And little sound shields don't do much. Little box, you stick your mic. It just didn't really fix it. So I was racking my brain for weeks and I ended up coming up with the perfect solution. I call it the patio umbrella technique. And this is where you take a patio umbrella, imagine like a beach umbrella is going down to a tripod. And it's not the patio umbrella that does it. It's a holder for a blanket that you throw over top of it. So like a thick blanket, you throw over top of it, it wraps around behind you, to the sides, in front of you, and you create this perfect on command, on demand home studio. So I get questions. Do I need to, do I need build a separate room in my house, or do I need to put up all these foam panels on my wall and these different things? Like, no, pop up a patio umbrella, throw a blanket over it, and you're in a great recording environment. You probably, for many people, won't need that, right? If you're in a small room, but worst case scenario, you have an option like that to use the patio umbrella technique. And this is a picture. This was years ago. I was visiting my family. I went into my sister's old closet and it took an e-reader, microphone, pop filter held in place by one of my sister's purses, going down to a laptop. And what you're seeing here produced a professional quality audiobook. So this is what's possible nowadays, especially with the advancements in technology. Now, for software, I recommend Audacity. And the reason I recommend it is it's free, it's Mac and PC compatible, and has everything that you need. Now there's some new a new AI program that I can consider optional that I also teach people to use. Totally up to optional, but you would still use Audacity for the initial recording. And I get questions. What about GarageBand, Camtasia, Adobe? I used Cubase, and when I was doing music production, I used Logic and GarageBand in music school. But the reason for Audacity is it's got everything you need. Yes, there's some other cool programs. Hindenburg is cool for like podcast recording and all these different things. But for the process that I teach, Audacity gives you everything that you need. And you only need about 15 to 20 minutes to learn the basic shortcuts to be able to do what you need to do. So even if you like other programs for doing different things, which I use other programs for different stuff, Audacity gives you everything you need for audiobook production. And again, it's free, Mac and PC compatible. So production process, called the reproduction process. You'd record the audiobook, you'd edit it. So you'd make, really the main thing here is you're probably going to make some mistakes. You're going to have some redo some sentences, things like that. So you got to know how to cut out the mistakes and redo the sentences and all of that. Then you apply the effects. These are not whiz bang sound effects. Most audiobooks, I also do not recommend music. And I'm a musician. I love music. You could technically use it as long as it's royalty free or you have the rights to it. The reason I don't use music is because it can interfere with the WhisperSync. And we can cover more of that if you have questions about it in the Q&A. That's where an audiobook syncs up with the Kindle edition. And that can potentially enhance sales if it's WhisperSync enabled. And plus it adds a level of complication to do that. So you don't need noise, sound effects. You don't need music. Most audiobooks that I've heard at least don't have any of that. It's about just getting the right quality sound. And then you upload it to a distributor. So that could be ACX, Findaway Voices, Authors Republic. So I got a little more to cover. I want to see, has it been helpful for you so far? Have you gotten any takeaways? Is it a waste of time, or have you gotten something from this? And you've seen why audiobooks make sense, 3 ways to turn your book into an audiobook, the equipment you need, how everyday authors can do it themselves. So love to know what you've gotten from this. So what about SoundCloud mastering? Is that something I've experimented with? Everything that you need is in Audacity. Fantastic, very helpful. If there's a particular takeaway you've gotten, I'd love to know that. Lots of great comments coming in here. Okay, great infos or speed of reading that you recommend. It'd be hard to demonstrate it, but the big thing for that speed of reading is go maybe slightly slower than what you feel you're pretty comfortable with. Meaning if you're reading faster where you keep tripping up over your words, that's going to be the thing that is, you kind of got to self gauge it. there based off of how comfortable you feel. Nice thing about audiobooks, people can speed them up or slow them down on most apps. All right, now I'm curious, this isn't going to be for everyone. If what I've covered so far has got you thinking maybe you want to do your own audiobook, does that apply to you? Who wants to learn more about doing it yourself? Because I have a few more things if that's the case for you. And if the answer is no, totally fine. Heads up, what's going to be coming in the next 5 to 10 minutes is really not going to be relevant to you. So if you need to grab some tea, take a quick bathroom break, right, what we're going to cover here is just for you if you want to do it yourself. All right, so I see a comment still seems daunting. Well, heads up, I did get freaked out when I looked into doing it myself. Because if you go to ACX, and it's the same with the other places, audiobooks need to be consistent in overall sound and formatting, include opening and closing credits, be comprised of all mono or all stereo files, and include a retail sample that is between 1 and 5 minutes long. Then the files need to contain only one chapter section per file with the section header read aloud. Have a running time no longer than 120 minutes. Have room tone at the beginning and end to be free of extraneous sounds. Measure between negative 23 decibels, negative 18 decibels, root mean squared, and have negative 3 decibel peak values and a maximum negative 60 decibel noise floor. Be 192 kilobytes per second or higher MP3 constant bit rate at 44.1 kilohertz. Alrighty then. So totally clear on exactly what you need to do and how to do all this, or are you like I was and maybe a little confused, a little intimidated? And I had a background in music and audio production, so I actually know what these things mean, and it still freaked me out because it's not as simple as hitting record. And by the way, yes, there are some plugins and some things that can do this. Sometimes just hitting the plugins and forcing it to these parameters still doesn't sound good. So it's not even just a matter necessarily of always using plugins or little tools and stuff. Yeah, we got deer and headlines, Greek to me, help. Okay, so at this point, you could do what I did, which was years ago, and try to figure it all out yourself through trial and error. You can follow recommendations that are out there that I found sometimes are really time consuming. They don't know all the shortcuts. They're not author friendly. They go, this worked for me, but it might not work for you in your particular setup or your particular environment. So that's an option. And if you do that, you might endure a slow and painful process trying to hunt down every little mistake you made. It can take 3 to 5 times longer than it needs to. There's no plugin, there's no AI tool that will replace this process of fixing these mistakes. And if you don't know some of the shortcuts, it can take way longer. I went through it. It's not fun. I grinded through it until I found a much better way. That's what some people do. You could have noises, breath sounds that annoy listeners or cause bad reviews, could end up getting the audiobook rejected. And it's not as simple as just hitting delete on there. There are some breath removal things, but they won't necessarily remove all the noises, right? So it's not a matter, again, of just going in there and hitting delete on this stuff. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. You'd accidentally choose the wrong settings, not realize it until it's too late, causing you to have to re-record and edit entire audiobook from scratch. So that could happen. And if you heard me say earlier, well, it's easy, and you're going, well, Derek, this doesn't sound easy. That's because it's not. It's a nightmare unless you go option B, which is you can have someone take you by the hands with a push these buttons approach that guarantees you do it right quickly and easily. That can show you the shortcuts, that can walk you through it, take all the guesswork out of it. So if that's what you prefer, may I share with you a way where you can watch over my shoulder, where you can do all these steps to create an audiobook from scratch. Even if you have no prior audio experience, even if you feel like you're a technophobe, freaked out by technology, you don't know the first thing about audiobook production. That's something you'd like me to share with you. All right, I got the yeses. Yes, please. Perfect. And if you don't want to know about it, totally fine. We can take a quick break here. If you want to learn about this, what I've created for you, the program called Audiobooks Made Easy. And Audiobooks Made Easy is a watch over my shoulder process. I take you in the program. You'll see exactly where to click, the steps to take, the mistakes to watch out for, and it walks you through step by step how to create audiobooks, helping you eliminate what could be a 6 to 12 month learning curve, where you get the biggest key to this process, the snapback editing shortcut to quickly cut any mistakes from your audiobook without spending hours and hours searching for them. This is, for those of you who do have audio background, I know some musicians here, this is faster and easier than punch and roll. So if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I can tell you the snapback editing shortcut better than punch and roll, better than any other approach that I've seen out there. You see what you need to do if you have things like pictures, links, other pieces of the book that aren't easy to narrate, and exact specifications that will work for you to get a pristine sound in minutes. And this is more than a step-by-step course. This is a done with you process. I consider this essential that you actually have someone working with you and validating that you've done the process correctly. So the way this works is you'll record a sample, a couple samples actually, of maybe a 1 or 2 minute sample of you reading something. It could be your book, it could be something else. And I'm going to make sure you do everything properly, from the recording to the editing to the post-production mastering, right? Or the mastering process. And I'll listen to it and I'll be like, yes, you're good with your sample. You can now record your whole audiobook. Or, hey, wait a second, there's a noise there that shouldn't be there. There's this, we got to adjust the settings. This, you missed this step, whatever it is. And this way you don't end up recording the whole audiobook, realize there was a mistake and have to redo the whole thing, which is a nightmare, as you might imagine. I'm going to save you all of that headache by letting you know right from the start that you're doing everything properly. And then if you need slightly different settings, if you need to make some tweaks, which sometimes happens, the general recommendations might need to be modified for you in your particular environment, your recording, things like that. You have me there. You also have me there if a situation comes up where something happens, maybe your audiobook doesn't get approved. I guarantee you get approved for Amazon, Audible, iTunes, ACX, Findaway Voices. If you're following the process properly, I know it will meet approval. So I had an author reach out who'd gone through the program, said, I uploaded my audiobook, it got rejected. I said, okay, just send me the emails that they sent. She couldn't make sense of all the numbers and stuff. But I immediately go, I see what the issue is. Just missed one step. All it was a 5-minute fix, if that. Showed her how to do it. She re-uploaded it. Everything was good. So you have someone in your corner through the process. If questions come up, if concerns come up, if there's an issue in the process, I'm there to work with you. And so I do ask you send the sample within 6 months. But there's people who got in years ago who I'll still listen to their samples, or they moved to a new location. In a nutshell, I'm here working with you, wanting to make sure that you will succeed with your audiobook production. So for me, it would have been over $5,000 to have my audiobooks produced by a narrator. This has saved me realistically over $5,000. $2,500 about how much it would have been for my longest audiobook production. Saved me that. I was able to do it myself. $1,000 is less than what I invested for a single audiobook production. So if I had a time machine and I could invest in this process, get paid thousands of dollars to do audiobooks for other authors, be able to do it for myself, save thousands of dollars, or I'm going to pay $1,350 for the narrator, or $1,000 to do it myself, I'd easily do $1,000 to do it myself. I'd want to read it out loud anyway while I'm doing the proofing process. $500 less than what you'd probably pay for even a short to medium length audiobook production from a single narrator, single production. And so for me, it's to save me realistically all of that. And what would it be worth to you? If money was no concern, it's worth just $497 to save potentially $700 maybe, or $2,500 plus in narrator fees. Now I can give you a heads up, it's not even going to be $497 today. For me, it's kind of like a no-brainer because, well, you're either going to pay a narrator, you might end up paying significantly more to a narrator depending on the length of the book. You pay the government, I like having a tax write-off at least, or you can invest in yourself, pay yourself with a skill you can use for yourself, or if you want to, you can even do this as a service for others. So as a special workshop special, since you've attended this, participated in it, so thank you to Alexa for inviting you here. Today, you get $200 off Audiobooks Made Easy. And that'll give you a little bit of extra funds then if you need to get a microphone, if you need to get some equipment or things like that. So I got a little bit more coming up here for you, but I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat. And it is that you go to audiobooksmadeeasy.com/Alexa. When you're on that page, you'll still see the $497. You click through, and then on the next page, it should automatically discount the $200 off. And if it doesn't, there's a little coupon code thing. Put in the coupon code Alexa, and it will drop the price down. And if you can let me know that coupon code works, something like that, just say coupon works. Let me know that everything is working there. There's also a 3-pay plan if you want to get in for even less than $100 today. The next month, another payment of $99.80, $99.80. Then 2 months from now, the third payment of $99.80. So you can secure the software today. I know some of you might be going, I want to do this, but I'm not ready to record my audiobook right now. Totally cool. You can get the deal today and then use it when you're ready. if that's 3 months down the road, if that's a year down the road, that's fine. You still have access to the program to go through, even if it's next year. I've had people that got in probably 5+ years ago that still have access to it, and you'll continuously get updates. So I actually just did a new update on using AI to help with the process. And that's not AI to replace your voice, that's AI to help with the editing process and giving it a good quality sound, which is an optional thing, but that was just added within the last week or two. So as these new bonuses or new updates are added, you get access to it. When you enroll today, you still get access to the bonuses down the road and those updates. Now, if you want to get it later at $497, you're welcome to do that. Fine with me. It's just if you want to secure the deal today, you can do that and then use it when you're ready. So this is what Dorothy Andreas of Streamline Success had to say about the program.
Being Derek, I actually, when I was done with the program, I felt like you should raise your prices because it was so good. And it was exactly, your title said what it was. You made making an audiobook easy for a person who is very technically challenged and hesitant about doing anything where I'm like, on a computer making it happen.
And
Being Derek,
this is Kevin Cruz, a New York Times bestselling author, said, I almost cried when I finished the course because it made me realize how much time I had wasted while narrating my last book. Next time I'll probably save 20+ hours and end up with higher quality too. So there are people who've actually done their own audiobooks and they didn't have a process that was as streamlined and high quality as this. So I've had a few narrators actually go through the program to pick up some of these strategies. And this is what Vivian had to say. If you want a simple step-by-step guide to creating your own audiobooks, this is the only training you need. It's a sample of her book.
What prompts a fresh start?
And this is what Joyce said. I want to thank you for making this course available to us. I'll point out to the end here, currently I have 6 of my own books now selling in audio format, and I'm working on my 5th narration for other authors. And so this actually ties into the question I just saw coming in. Is the price for one book? This is a process that you can use. Once you know the process, you can apply it to, like Joyce said, 6 books, 10 books, 100 books. Once you know how to do it yourself, you'll be able to just rinse and repeat the process. This is empowering you with the skills to be able to record your own audiobook. So whether you want to do it for a single book or multiple books, you'll have that process down. Number of bonuses that you get. These are not all the bonuses, but some that are included: where to find legit audiobook reviewers, links to resources if you want to build a business as a narrator, and the big thing, advanced audiobook marketing strategies. There's an opt-in for this, free opt-in, just a heads up, there's an opt-in and then you get access to an exclusive training. Also had some additional trainings such as on doing direct sales of audiobooks. So you'll see how you can sell direct to consumer, doing things like BookBub ads for audiobooks and so on. So you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're not sure you want to do your own audiobooks, you want to get in there, you want to explore, you can do that. And if you find that it's just not for you, totally fine. As long as you let me know within 30 days, you get a full money-back guarantee. So to recap, you get the easy-to-follow video trainings, the lifetime updates. As long as I'm updating it, you get access to those. The step-by-step checklist, the audiobook review bonus, the editing shortcuts, the business bonus, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and the big thing, the one-to-one support with me, which I consider essential. This is not something you go through on your own and never reach out to me. You take a risk if you do that. This is a big key, is that you actually want to send me your samples, and I'm making sure you're doing everything properly. And that's how we guarantee that you get approved on the audiobook distributors. So when you enroll, you get instant access. It's entirely digital. You'll get an email within probably hopefully 5 minutes or less after you sign up, and that'll give you your login details. So if you don't get the email within 5 minutes, let me know and I'll make sure you get set up. On this page, this is where you enter the coupon code, and that coupon code is Alexa. And so I actually have it pulled up because sometimes I get questions. I didn't see anything coming in here, but I'll just quickly pull this up. So this is the page that you see. You can scroll down. If you just click on any of these links here, you do see $497 there. So if we go through, we'll double check the coupon code did apply. So Alexa, if it doesn't apply here, you would type in Alexa and hit apply. And that's where you do it. You can choose 1 payment or 3 payments and then put in your details there. All right. So I see I'm in. Lori, congrats, Lori. If you're in, you can say I'm in. I saw a number of questions just pop in, and I know that there's quite a bit in the Q&A box. Can this be transferred to a friend? This is great. You could purchase this for a friend, and another thing that you can do is you can share access to with one assistant or family member or someone that's working with you on the audiobook if you want to. So some people might go, I want my nephew to do the editing for me, or whoever, right? You could do the recording yourself and then share access and basically have me train a person on your team through the videos. They can watch the videos and learn how to do the editing process, or vice versa. Some people go, I want my sister or my virtual assistant or whoever to do, maybe it's like someone you know. Sister has a great voice. She wants to do the recording and I'm going to do the editing. Well, however you do it, you can share it with another person and they can go through the training, and then you two can work together through it. All right, so I know there's questions in the chat. I'm going to start though with the Q&A here. Let me pull this up. Okay. From way earlier, how do you integrate footnotes in the audio flow? If it makes sense to do the footnotes, you can do it in the audio. Otherwise, you can do it as a separate downloadable thing. Go to the website for the footnotes, go download this PDF. You can send them elsewhere for the footnotes if it's not something that you want in the flow. Okay, I don't know why it's saying type answer. I see. Lauren, thank you, Lauren, for helping with this. Okay, something about the volume. We covered that earlier. And Lauren, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to chime in with, you're welcome to. Otherwise I'm just gonna keep going through these questions here. In a professional nonfiction book, should I include the reference list in the audio? I think that's the same question, that follow-up. Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to do the references in the audio. You can do that as a separate thing. Okay, what is the ideal duration of an audio segment in nonfiction books? I'm not quite clear I understand that. I mean, you're going to read the chapters. You're going to read through most of the book. You don't necessarily need all the front matter or all the back matter. The question I ask is it going to help with my marketing? So does including about the author help? Yeah, I'd probably include that. Acknowledgements, kind of optional. Other books by the author, you might want to include that, right? So you can also listen and purchase some audiobooks, and you'll see and hear what they include or don't include. So are picture books good as audiobooks? Well, if it's just pictures, I'm not sure what you would narrate. But if it's pictures and a story, then as long as there's, a decent amount to narrate, as long as if the audiobook is 2.5 minutes long, that might be a nice little freebie. But as long as you get 10, 20 plus minutes in there of audio, then that could work. I thought Findaway Voices was no longer in existence due to Spotify. It is. It's just owned by Spotify. So if you go to findawayvoices.com, you'll see it's owned by Spotify. Okay, if I record with my voice, I have an accent that is different from the accent of the setting of the book. USA English versus British English. Do you think that turns off an audience if the accent doesn't sync with the settings characters? You can always check with your audience. I personally don't have an issue with it. But it's ultimately going to be something that you have to check with your own audience and the genre and see what they expect. Okay, I speak clearly, but now my voice is a bit scratchy and I get hoarse quickly. Can I still use myself? My book is a memoir. Yeah, so without hearing it, this is where I go back to get unbiased feedback. Meaning, you can say my voice is scratchy. Well, if I haven't heard your voice, I don't know, is it a little scratchy? Is it not? If it gets hoarse quickly, you can record in shorter segments. You don't have to do long things. Something that can help is the devices. It's kind of like a nebulizer type of thing where it can be like a humidifier type of thing that you put on your face that can potentially help with that. Some teas and things can also potentially help. Okay, what if your audiobook needs more than one narrator? Is the author in charge of combining the tracks? If you go with more than one narrator, I'd go with a production company that specializes in that. And I'd also question whether it needs more than one narrator. The vast majority of audiobooks do not need more than one narrator. Is there a formula to figure out an approximate number of hours in audiobook by the number of pages? Yeah, so I covered that earlier. It's not necessarily by pages, but it was like 46,500 words was approximately 5 hours of production time. Or wait, not 5 hours of production time, 5 hours of finished audio, which might end up being, I think I'm getting my numbers mixed up. 46,500 words would be about a 5 hour long audiobook. And then you can consider about 5 hours of production time, 4 to 5 hours of production time, multiply that by it. So we're talking 25 hours. Do authors typically send narrators the book or manuscript to read from, or do authors typically prepare a script for the narrator to read from? The script just is the manuscript. You don't need like a specialty script for the narrator. You just send them the manuscript for your book. Memoir is 85,000 words. How long to produce? Depends on how quickly you work. That could be, somewhere in the, 40 hour total production time plus range. Okay, might be a silly question, but if the author provides the narrator with directions, should the author be credited as the director in the audiobook? I've never seen a credit for an audiobook director. I've only seen credit for author and narrator. If you want to add it as a credit, that's up to you. I don't really know where that would show up, though, unless you want to have them mention it somewhere at the start of the audiobook. What are your thoughts on Apple product microphone? I need to know the specific microphone. I'd look also whether it's a dynamic or a condenser microphone. And the mono mic, yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'd have to look up the specs. So if you have questions, if you send me an email and saying, hey, would this particular mic work, I can look into it. Don't understand where the pop filter goes. It's usually going to attach to the stand and have a little thing that curves around and then sticks in front of it. But there's different pop filters that attach differently. But ultimately, you end up orienting the pop filter so there's some space between the pop filter and the microphone. Possibly use Apple iPods. I wouldn't use iPods as a microphone. What type of effects? So these are things that give you the right type of volume, and that's the main thing, is getting the volume right and also cutting out noise. Hey, what did you use for your slides? I had someone that did my slides who helped me produce the slides. He's no longer doing it. His name was Eduardo. But there's another woman, April, who's taken over from that. So if you want to know who this, get in touch for that, but I can't take credit for the slides. Okay, are you using a pop filter on your mic? I'm not currently using one. It's pretty okay right now for something like this. If I was recording an audiobook, though, I would use a pop filter. There will be a recording. What do you record on? I record on the computer using Audacity. And one thing to note, Audacity, Mac, and PC. So things like a Chromebook, unless they've changed, you wouldn't be able to load Audacity on a Chromebook. So you would want something like a Mac or PC. Explain more about WhisperSync with sound effects and music. Yeah, so sound effects and music might interfere with WhisperSync. So the way WhisperSync works with an audiobook is you upload it, and after a period of time, if everything is done properly, as long as most of the audiobook matches the manuscript, Amazon should sync it up and say that the audiobook is WhisperSync enabled with the Kindle edition. Sound effects, music could interfere with that process, keeping it from being WhisperSync. So that's one reason I don't recommend adding sound effects in music. It also complicates the process. Yeah, what type of recorder? So mention that, just going straight to the computer, plugging the microphone into a USB on your computer, going into Audacity, hitting record, making sure your microphone is selected and recording through there. Just had my audiobook accepted by Amazon. Does this mean they or I keep all residuals? Not clear on this. So depends on how you went through Amazon. So Karen, did you use ACX? Did you use Audible? Did you use ACX? Did you use Findaway Voices? Did you use Authors Republic? You need to know how that worked. Or did you use a virtual voices type of thing? Can I do all this on my iPad Pro? I wouldn't recommend it. Even if you could do it, it would just be, the editing would be way harder without a keyboard. And that one thing is, if you got to get a laptop, it would be worth it in the sense that you don't need a high-end laptop. I mean, like something that's like 100, $200, even something you find used, that's, a number of years old. You don't need anything super high-end for doing audio production. Now, if it's like a 2002 laptop, you might run into some issues with operating systems or whatever, but you don't need something that's high performance. It's not like doing video production or gaming or something like that. Can this code be offered to a friend instead of me? Yes, you can share. If you want to share this replay, if you know someone who would benefit from it, you're welcome to share once the replay link goes out, and you can share the link. The coupon code does expire, but you can share it with them. Okay, and we're going to keep this going through the weekend, the deal. Yeah, so you can share. Is there a sound editor for filtering out extra S sound? Not sure what you mean by extra S. Maybe when it's kind of stronger or a harsher S, and I actually do have something in the course that I cover for that can help minimize or reduce it a bit. Also, the type of microphone you use will have an impact on that. If an author does his own narration but wants to have an audio engineer do the recording and production, what is the average cost per hour? What is the average rate? Audio engineer. I guess it depends on how much they want to do. I'll say that if you go through this program, you'll save on some of the editing, because the first part of the editing process, I really recommend you do, because you're just going to save. It's simple enough and streamlined enough that you're going to save on having someone else do it. With that said, I don't know how much they're going to charge per hour. I don't have an average rate for that, because they're going to look at what needs to be done for it. I like to have several character voices, so my actors live abroad. How difficult to cut together dialogue and balance voices? Pretty difficult. It's one of the reasons I don't recommend doing it, because you have different people in different environments, and you get an inconsistency. They're recording on one microphone in one room, a different microphone in another room. So even besides mixing it together, which even if you can do that, does the sound change because they're now on different microphones in different rooms, right? And so you get an inconsistency issue there, and that can actually potentially cause a rejection if it's highly inconsistent in terms of the audio throughout the audiobook, right? So that's why I say, if you're going to have multiple characters or voices, see if there's a production company where they have people in-house that are all going to the same studio doing it. Most of the time, it's just not necessary, though. I mean, again, listen to a lot of audiobooks. You'll see that isn't often the case. It's up to you if you want to do it. I don't teach to do it because you just run into so many potential issues, and I can't guarantee that one person recording in one environment is going to work syncing up with a different person in a different environment. Notice that children's book do have sound effects such as Peter Pan. Are these hard to add? Not hard to add. I just don't teach adding them because of the whisper sync issues, and they're usually not necessary. If they're simple enough to add, or you could hire someone that can add in some sound effects. My book is basically a curriculum for middle schoolers, including stories, lessons, and activities. How would you recommend spacing and recording around the activities, mazes, word searches, etc.? I kind of need to see it, but you could allow a couple seconds of pause between different things. My book is nonfiction with many scientific studies and endnotes. I often hear audio book authors offering a separate PDF document that supports the book. Is that what you recommend? Yes, for things like that. A pianist who's providing intro music in the opening and closing credits for my ACX audiobook currently in production. Do you know of any best practices or things ACX might require? I'm not sure what you mean by best practices or things they might I know what the requirements are, but I'm not quite sure how that syncs up with what you're asking for the intro music. If you can clarify that. Should the narrator try to use different voices for each character? Again, listen to some audiobooks. You'll hear how they do different characters and inflections. Some might do more of a straight read through, like they're just reading a story. Others might change up their voice a little bit. A lot of times I've found that the changes aren't particularly dramatic, and they're not trying to fake different things. So there's actually a YouTube video on this of some. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the title of it offhand, but you can find some resources out there too from narrators and ACX probably has some of this. Findaway Voices might have some resources for narrators about tips and how do you handle different characters and things like that. And I also provide some links to that inside the course as well. My father and I have written a book together, nonfiction, full of personal stories. We're thinking he'll share his stories and I'll share mine since the book is written from both voices, and we'll make the narrating work between us. We're both professional speakers. Do you think this is out of the realm of DIY? I do have a professional editor in the family. It's not out of the realm. I would ask, though, are you going to be in the same environment while you're recording? Are you going to be in the same room using the same microphone? That would be the big thing that I would recommend for it. Otherwise, at least using the same microphone in a very similar room, you run a risk of inconsistency, but it is doable. Almost anything is doable. It's just a matter of how complicated it's going to be. I have a good narration and main character voice, and I know others who are perfect for other parts, but one who would do the two British characters lives abroad, and what form would they send their spoken recorded parts and how difficult it's got together? Yeah, so similar question. I think